So in this short series, we're going to take on pain in the tendon pain, which might be described better as tendinopathy. I've got an opathy of my tendon. Now, typically, what we hear is, I've got tendinitis. And that is a word that is so common that even children know tendinitis. And what we want to appreciate is sometimes we're going to overdo it. We'll overload it, right? We're going to just do a lot, and we're going to have an acute inflammatory response that lasts 3 to 13 days, and that acute inflammatory response cycle, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little shorter. But in short, that's an acute new issue, right? That something's gone on, and I've got some pain or irritation in my tendon. Most of the time, when people use the word tendinitis, they really are talking about pain that's gone on for months. And a better description of that is, again, tendinopathy or even tendinosis. And tendinosis is a specific kind of a problem where we see sort of a blood flow, tendon sheath, tendon sort of dysregulation. Now, here's the key. The game with tendon healing is twofold. One, it's about loading, right? So the fundamental idea of human beings is that in order to express movement mechanics of the tissues correctly, you have to move and load the tissues. So that's called mechanotransduction, which means at a cellular level, if I want that tissue to express itself the way it's genetically designed to in that location, it has to be loaded mechanically, which means I need to concentrically load that tendon, I need to eccentrically load that tendon, and I need to isometrically load that tendon if I want the tendon to behave. This is one of the reasons when we go through people's programming, we're making sure that we are at least spending time in those three shapes. And I'll shout out to Cal Dietz and his triphasic training for exaggerating and really sort of bucketing some of those key concepts in training. Now, one of the issues, though, is that oftentimes people are like, yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to move to get this tendon healing, but my knee hurts, or my elbow hurts, or I've got a tendon kind of problem that really doesn't make it fun or interesting for moving. So moving is a problem. And one of the things that leads us to then is thinking, well, what's the second game there? Well, the second game is blood flow. Oftentimes tendons just, the literature says tendons don't have great blood flow. And I'm like, well, they have enough blood flow to be tendons, right? Otherwise, we would have worked this out 2.5 million years ago of evolution. But really one of the problems is that when we have an old and cold problem, not an acute problem, and a problem that we've suppressed the inflammatory response with through NSAIDs, through icing, through inactivity, what we end up is sort of a junky, cold, intercellular mess, and that isn't well perfused. So in our model of this D2R2, one of the first things we want to appreciate is that can we get this tissue desensitized in a way that allows us to continue to move more, begin to load it respectfully, right? I'm not going to be able to maybe do standing broad jumps on my knee, but maybe there are some things that I can do. And what we want to appreciate is that the word for us is not necessarily analgesic. Analgesic means sort of pain relieving. And certainly if I want an analgesic, I can take some Tylenol or half a bottle of bourbon and I will be numb. But what we want to do is get the brain not to pay attention to that thing. And that sometimes analgesia for us isn't the right phrase. What is a better phrase is desensitization. So can I desensitize this? What are some of the tools available to me to help desensitize this painful tissue? And that's what we're going to talk about in the next couple. Because really what we're thinking is, hey, blood flow is queen here when we're talking about trying to upstart, especially the regulation, or at least change what's going on in a local small window model where we're able to say, hey, can we improve blood flow dynamics? Can we improve circulation dynamics, fluid dynamics in this area? And then simultaneously, by changing some of that, by reperfusing it and decongesting it, can we get the brain to not care about it so much, not to read those signals as so much threat, so that I can then get about the business of loading. And if you Google tendinosis, people say 6 months, 4 to 6 months. That's a long time of not loading because I have pain. And that's a real problem. So we know that oftentimes when we have really unhealthy tissue that for whatever reason got there, again, we're agnostic, but suddenly end up with this condition, what we want you to appreciate is that pain will drop out of that conversation well before the tendon is strong enough or loaded enough or no longer has the conditions, signs appropriate to be diagnosed as tendinosis or tendinopathy. So again, what are my first steps that I can make my knee or my tendon feel better? What should I be thinking about? And then, of course, loading is going to be on you. And I don't want to get into loading conversation, but I want to show you a couple of my favorite ways to help manage that blood flow congestion problem when we're talking about tendons. Stay tuned.